You're sitting across from someone you just met. Could be a date, could be a job interview, could be a new friend at a party. And they ask you the question everyone eventually asks. So, what are you like? And without even thinking, you answer, I'm pretty introverted. Or I'm a perfectionist. Or I'm the type who needs my space. You say it like you're reading off a label someone stitched into you at the factory, like it was always there. But what if it wasn't? What if the thing you call your personality isn't something you were born with, but something that was done to you? In 1985, a physician named Vincent Felitti was running an obesity clinic at Kaiser Permanente in San Diego. Fluorescent lights, linoleum floors, patients stepping onto a scale every Tuesday morning, and the clinic was working. People were losing 100 pounds, sometimes more. But Felitti kept noticing something that made no sense. The patients who were losing the most weight, the success stories, were the ones most likely to drop out. Right when it was working, they quit. So Felitti did something unusual for a doctor. He stopped looking at charts and started asking questions. He sat across from 286 patients, one by one, and asked them about their lives. What came out of those rooms changed medicine. The majority of the dropouts had been sexually abused as children. The weight wasn't a health problem, it was armor. A body they had built, unconsciously, to become invisible. Less attractive, less approachable, less vulnerable. And when the armor came off, the thing it was protecting them from came flooding back. That discovery led Felitti to partner with epidemiologist Robert Anda at the CDC. Together, they launched the ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, surveying over 17,000 middle-class Americans. The results broke open an entire field. Two-thirds of participants had at least one adverse childhood experience. Abuse, neglect, a parent who drank, violence in the home, 1 in 8 had 4 or more, and the more ACEs a person carried, the higher their rates of depression, addiction, heart disease, cancer, and suicide. But here's the part that matters for you and me. The study also predicted personality patterns. Not vaguely, specifically. Think about the person in your life who can't say no. The one who'll cancel their own plans to help a coworker they barely like. You probably call them a people pleaser. But Felitti's data tells a different story. That person often grew up in a home where the only way to be safe was to keep the dangerous person happy. Saying no meant consequences, so they stopped saying no, and they got so good at it that by adulthood, it didn't feel like a strategy anymore, it felt like a personality. The perfectionist who spirals over a typo in an email? Often someone who grew up in a house where mistakes weren't corrected. They were punished. Perfection wasn't a standard, it was a survival mechanism. The person who says, I just don't like conflict, they're usually the one who spent years reading the tension in a room before they could read a book. Scanning doorways, listening for footsteps, mapping the mood of every adult in the house before deciding if it was safe to speak. These aren't personality types, they're adaptations. In the 1950s, British psychiatrist John Bowlby started studying children who had been separated from their mothers during World War II. Evacuees, kids shipped out of London during the Blitz, placed with strangers in the countryside. Small hands holding cardboard suitcases, labels tied around their necks. And what Bowlby saw in those children wasn't just sadness. It was a complete restructuring of how they connected to other humans, not temporarily, permanently. Now here's where it gets eerie. A decade later, developmental psychologist Mary Ainsworth at Johns Hopkins built an experiment to test Bowlby's theory. She called it the strange situation. Put a toddler in a room with their mother. Mother leaves, mother comes back. Simple. But what happened in that room mapped to adult behavior with frightening precision. Some kids cried when their mother left, then calmed down when she returned. Secure attachment. They grew into adults who can be close to people without drowning in it. But others didn't do that. Some became hysterical and couldn't be soothed even when the mother came back. Anxious attachment. They became adults who send 12 texts when you don't reply in an hour. Some completely ignored their mother leaving and returning. Avoidant attachment. They became adults who say, I just don't need people that much, and believe it. And some froze. Reached for the mother and then pulled away. Wanted closeness and feared it at the same time. Disorganized attachment. They became adults who fall in love and then burn it down. None of these are choices, they're blueprints. Drafted before you could speak, and you've been building from them ever since. Here's the part that stings. The trait you're proudest of might be your deepest wound wearing a mask. The strong one who never cries. That was a child who learned that tears made things worse. The independent one who needs nobody? That was a child who reached out and no one was there. The funny one who lights up every room? That was a child who figured out that laughter was the only thing that stopped the yelling. But here's what nobody talks about. Trauma doesn't just rewrite your behavior, it rewrites your cells. In 2015, neuroscientist Rachel Yehuda at the Econ School of Medicine at Mount Sinai published research that made headlines around the world. She studied the children of Holocaust survivors, people who were born after the war, who never set foot in a camp, who never heard a gunshot, and she found that those children carried epigenetic changes in the exact same stress response genes that had been altered in their parents. Not the DNA sequence itself, the switches that control which genes turn on and off. Trauma had flipped the switches in the parents, and the flipped switches got passed down. The parents' terror became the children's anxiety, not through stories, not through parenting style, through biology. Your nervous system isn't just responding to your life. It might be responding to your grandmother's. So if your personality was shaped by things that happened before you could choose, some of it before you were even born, does that mean you're stuck with it? No. In 2004, psychologist Walter Mischel at Columbia, the same man behind the marshmallow experiment, published decades of research showing that personality is not a fixed thing you carry around like a blood type. It shifts. It bends. It changes depending on the room you're in, the person you're with, the threat level your body perceives. Mischel called it the if-then signature. If this situation happens, then this response fires. You're not an angry person. You're someone who learned to use anger in specific moments because it once kept you alive. And anything learned can be unlearned. Neuroscientist Stephen Porges spent years mapping how your vagus nerve, the longest nerve in your body, running from your brainstem to your gut, decides before your conscious mind even wakes up whether you're safe or in danger. That's why you shut down in certain conversations. Why small criticisms hit like a truck. Why you go numb the moment someone gets too close. It's not a personality flaw, it's a nervous system running a threat assessment on old data. Data from when you were 4. Maybe from before you were born? But the nervous system is not concrete, it's clay. It can be reshaped. Through safe relationships. Through experiences that quietly contradict the old evidence again and again until your body finally believes the war is over. This doesn't mean your parents were evil. Most people who create ACEs lived through them too. It's not a blame chain, it's a relay. And you might be the first person in your bloodline who can see the baton clearly enough to set it down. So the next time you're sitting across from someone and they ask, "What do you like?" Pause before you answer. Because the label you're about to reach for, the introvert, the perfectionist, the lone wolf, the people pleaser, that might not be you. That might be the version of you that learned how to survive a house, a school, a childhood that wasn't always safe. And the person underneath that, the one who existed before the first wound, is still in there. You just haven't been introduced yet. You don't need another personality test. You need to realize you've been living inside the results of one you never agreed to take.